Hello, my Archeage friends. This is Arid in game name September on Thunderwing, Nui, and the public test server. In this video, what I'm going to do is reevaluate coin purses, crates, and larceny in general for Archeage 4.5 for both the Fresh Start as well as the Legacy server. Alright, to get started, I want to thank Tryon, specifically our community manager Muzzy, for making the time to grant me these items that I needed on the test server to run the calculations that you guys are going to see here in a minute. We actually often give Tryon a lot of grief for just whatever, but they've been pretty forthright with me, and when it comes to questions and requests such as this, they always answer me, even if it's something that I don't want to hear. So thank you very much, Muzzy. Alright, if you take a look in my bag, you'll see a wide array of coin purses and crates. What I have is a set of 100 coin purses and crates from nobles all the way up to the ancestral level. So what I'm going to do in this video is break down the silver to labor ratios for each one of those items for both the legacy and the Fresh Start servers. And what I'm also going to do is give brief examples of how to obtain each of them. But as far as it goes for my favorite crate farming spots, I'm going to leave that to my next video in which I cover my top 10. Okay, so the larceny subject is a pretty vast subject, but for speed and consistency, what I'm going to do is just include some brief footage of me opening these purses and crates, but I'm also going to summarize everything that I find in a spreadsheet, and I'll make that available, of course, in the video description. Hopefully you know by now that I have no intentions to mislead or misrepresent what happens in game, and I really only want to provide you the best information possible, and that is to help your gameplay. So with that said, I'm going to open up all these coin purses first, and I'm going to speed up that footage. In this process, I'll be putting all my gold into the warehouse so we can get a true amount obtained from each batch of 100.
Alka-Seltzer, plop, plop, fizz, fizz. Oh, what a relief it is.
Let's take a quick look at the silver to labor ratios in a spreadsheet. As you can see, and as it always has been, the higher tier of the coin purse, the more silver to labor that you're going to be earning for opening them up. Now, you may ask, are they actually worth opening up? I mean, what is a good silver to labor ratio? Well, that really depends on what your goals are. I find myself opening up all the coin purses I get on my Fresh Start character, as my plan is to reach max level larceny. So making a small amount of silver per labor is better than making none. On the Legacy server, and since I've already reached max level larceny, I really only open up Ancestral coin purses. That's the top tippity top tier, and I only do that. I only save them actually for when I need to burn labor and I didn't have time to play that day. The rest, princes, jesters, nobles, I just delete them. Okay, next we're going to move on to the mob crates. Now I'm going to leave talking about the copper, silver, and gold crates. Actually, the gold crates I'm not even going to talk about in this video. But I'll leave that stuff to the next section when I talk about the gold per hour. Here what I want to do is just focus on the mob crates like the nobles, the jesters, and the princes, so on and so on. I'm going to start by opening up these noble crates, and just as I did with the coin purses, I'm going to speed up this footage, but I do feel like it's important to show that actual process. So while that's going on, I do want to say this about the crates. Unlike coin purses, which actually introduce gold into the game's economy, you get straight up gold for opening, or silver for opening up coin purses. The crates, in general, just shift gold from one person to another. There are exceptions with like the trees and the braziers, which come out of the prince and the queens and the ancestral purses, because you just generally sell those to the vendor. That said, for the most part, the crates are more profitable for the individual opening them up, but they do not add much to the economy in the way of inflation.
The ladies really dig these things, if you know what I mean, and I think you do.
Sometimes you feel like a nut, sometimes you don't.
I just keep thinking he can't be dead. He can't be. And then I look at that casket and I'm like, that's gotta be Diddle in there. Because why would they put his picture on another dude's coffin? And that's when I lose it.
Okay, so this is what it looks like after I opened up the crates in the pure silver to labor ratio. I have included data from the North America auction house clusters for both the Legacy and the Fresh Start. Now, if you're on the EU servers, they're going to have slightly different values. Some may be a little higher, some may be a little bit lower, but what we can say overall is the crates offer a much better silver to labor ratio than that of the coin purse. But again, remember that crates are not creating any wealth. They are simply shifting it from one person to another. So if you want to get upset about alts farming this stuff, you need to only look at what they're introducing into inflation by the coin purses, not the crates. Okay, so now I want to look at how much gold you can make per hour. Now, before we get started, I want to just preface all this and say I understand that this is a very subjective matter, and it's very dependent on which server you play on, which region you're in, what class you're playing, how well you can actually play that class, and what type of equipment, aka gear score, that you actually have. To that end, I am going to include 3 examples of 1 hour of farm time, and that is going to be for the Jester, the Prince, and the Ancestral mobs. And one of those hours is going to be from the Fresh Start on the Jesters, and then the other 2 hours for the Prince and the Ancestral. That will be done with my Legacy characters, mostly because the zone that I wanted to farm in, which we'll get into that here in a bit, was not available on the Fresh Start. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is take a look at the Jester Mobs. In this case, I was farming the goats up in Jade Gale region of Hassela during, of course, war. I mean, war is so important. My character is an archer with a legendary GHA bow. That's a dungeon bow. His gear score is 3,900. I used 20% loot buffs. This is what I was able to obtain, as you can see here in my bag. 364 Jester purses, 63 Jester crates, 15 copper crates, and 32 pieces of armor, 27 weapons, 11 accessories. Now, before I break all this down, let's talk about the non-crate / purse loot drops. Okay, so the first ones that I want to talk about is the copper and the silver crates. Now, the copper and silver crates have really helped the larceny profession because these things used to be so rare. You could go an hour and maybe only find one or none, but now the drop rate has been significantly increased to where you can count them as a commodity while you farm. Another good thing about them is they cost you no gold or labor to open. They are simply valuable just as they are, and you can sell them on the auction house straight away. Now, if you want to know more about the silver and the copper crates, I do have a lot of videos here on my channel, and I've talked extensively about them, so look into that. Next up, I want to talk about the armor, weapon, and accessory drops. Now, again, these mobs were the Jester Mobs, so each one of these items is going to cost me 40 labor to identify. And, of course, that labor can be mitigated if you are high enough in the larceny profession. Additionally, if you would end up having to salvage these items, you're going to spend 10 more labor and 5 silver for an even stone. But that labor that you spend to salvage them can also be mitigated with the masonry profession. Now, at most, you're going to have 50 labor into opening each one of these pieces. But if you happen to be maxed out in larceny and masonry, you're only going to have 30 labor in them. But when you evaluate whether or not you should open these up, you have to consider the potential values of the items coming out of them and also the Archeum. In the best case scenarios, you can find weapons or armor pieces, at least on the fresh start, worth around 50 gold. That, of course, would be a unique grade item with the perfect stats. And when I say perfect stats, I mean a scepter or a staff with mainly intelligence, or a club with spirit and stamina, or a leather piece with agility for archers or strength for melees. You guys get the idea. When that happens, that 50 labor you spent to open them actually produces a very high return. 50 labor, 1 gold per labor point, and that is if you have no skill to mitigate that labor cost. That is a great return. Now, what is more likely to happen is you're going to end up opening a bunch of these and you're going to get a lot of grand grade stuff, in which, at least on the fresh start servers, you can salvage that for Archeum. Now, the fresh start servers, the value of Archeum, especially for the armor and the accessories, that's the Moonlight and the Starlight, is high enough to warrant the chance of just opening them up and going for those 50 gold jackpots. But what you may want to think twice about is whether or not you should open the weapons. In either case, what I'm going to do for this video is open up everything and show you here on my spreadsheet my total labor cost and my total return for the hour that I spent doing larceny here. And although this was on the fresh start server, I'm going to also get the values as if I was on the legacy server. Now, finally, the last thing that I want to talk about in this armor, weapons, accessory stuff is that when you open up these unidentified items, you're always going to at least get a grand grade. And so you can get up to unique grade. Now, the way that those actually break down, if you're looking at them in the Archeum standpoint, is the grand and rare, no matter what they are, will always, when you salvage them, give you 1 Archeum shard. Items that are arcane, heroic, and unique, if you do end up having to salvage them, like they got crappy stats on them, there is a chance that for those arcane, heroic, and unique items that you actually get 3 shards. Now the Jester Mobs drop level 40 armor, which turns into shards. Nobles Mobs drops level 30-ish armor, and those turn into dust. Big difference. Alright, so I went ahead and opened up everything that I had, and actually I did pretty well. I got 4 sellable weapons, 5 sellable pieces of armor, and pretty much just salvaged the rest. I ended up with 30 Moonlight, 23 Sunlight, and 12 Starlight Shards. I didn't need to open up the purses or crates to run the numbers, since we already know their average values from the spreadsheet. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that spreadsheet back up, and this is what it looks like after an hour of farming. So you can see here, this 1 hour I made 550 gold, but I also would be using 5,090 labor, with my overall silver to labor ratio on the Fresh Start server being 11 silver per labor point, which is actually about what you should be shooting for. I mean, the long held tradition is 10 silver per labor point, so this is that and then some. All in all, the 1 hour of farming, I did get 550 gold and a good silver to labor ratio for a Fresh Start server. I gotta say, this wasn't that bad. I actually did get pretty lucky on my armor and weapons, snagging a couple pieces of armor that are going to sell for at least 35 gold each, and a weapon that has been averaging 75 gold. If you want to think about this stuff in the terms of time, 1 hour war, I got a good, well, a decent silver to labor ratio, and it was actually enough labor to basically burn 2 days worth of my Patreon labor. Now, if you want to increase the silver to labor ratio even more, you could actually discard those coin purses, since we know that those are pretty horrible. And then I'll just delete this row, and you see that my silver to labor ratio gets almost to 14 silver per labor point, and that also saves me quite a bit of labor, knocking my hour down to 3,600-ish labor burned. Now, I'm going to leave that up to you, but for me, since I'm working on my Larceny anyway, I'll take the hit and just open up the coin purses as well. Alright, the next up, these numbers are actually go a little bit faster because I don't have anything to open up. So we're going to jump over to the Thunderwing server and take a look at the 2 hours farming I did with my character there. So the first hour I spent out in Reedwind on the orcs, or in the orc village. And the results are separated. If you look here in my bag, that's this print stuff off to the right. Total of 382 purses, 62 crates, 12 silver crates, and 31 time scrap scrolls. If you don't know, Reedwind has the mobs that are dropping the Timespace scrap scrolls. Oof. And 1,650 honor points from the new honor point drops that happened, 4.0? Also, I did get a couple of those haunted chests, but for the Legacy server, I actually don't recommend opening them up unless you're really just working on a cloak and you just got labor to burn. The second hour I spent out in Whalesong Harbor near the Harani base. The items that you can see in my bag, those are separated off to the left. That entails 224 Ancestral purses, 31 crates, 11 silver chests, and 11 cursed armor scraps. That's the stuff you need to make the Aranor, and I also pulled 1,550 honor. I also should mention that I was playing my Revenant build, check my past videos for that, running a 8,900 gear score, and both zones were actually in war when I did my farming. Again, war is very important. Additionally, I was running a 50% loot buff, again, Legacy servers, and I also have the Crater Cub. Okay, so this is how it's going to shake out for the Prince Mobs here in the Reedwind. A total of 700 gold for that 1 hour, which is pretty consistent with the last time I reported on Prince crates and purses. A total of 3,800 labor burned. Now, mind you, on the Legacy server, I am max Larceny with a silver to labor ratio of 18 silver per labor point. Not bad. Now, if you want to increase that even more, just like I did with the other one, you can discard the Prince purses, as I do, and my silver to ratio jumps to 80 silver per labor point. Only cost me 740 labor, which means that I could actually do this every day as a patron for 3 hours, which if you do this daily would net me around 1,800 gold per day doing larceny and just burning the labor that I get for free. Now granted, I didn't deduct the value of the loot buffs that I was using, and also getting 3 hours of Reedwind War per day would actually take some doing. But the larger point is that larceny can be very profitable. Now finally, the last example that we're going to do is the hour that I spent out in Whalesong Harbor. And if you scroll down here, I've got all this stuff put onto the spreadsheet. I pulled a total of 1,050 gold in that 1 hour, but I pretty much burned 2 days worth of labor, averaging 17 silver per labor point. I can actually do a very respectable 50 silver per labor point ratio if, once again, I discard the ancestral purses, and that would bring me down to 750 gold an hour. And since this zone is likely to get to war daily, at least on Thunderwing, it's actually a decent spot to farm. The big issue here is the mobs don't die so easy, so sometimes I am popping some of those OP buffs, and the spawns are kind of sparse. They don't really group up that well, especially for the Revenant. Nowhere near as great as it is out in Reedwind. I still prefer to go here if it is in war because it is the increased drop rate. And Reedwind is not cycling. It's actually a good backup plan or a backup zone. And once again, we'll talk more about my favorite spots to farm in my next video. But for now, I hope that this information helps you decide if mob farming is right for you, or at the very least, something that you can tolerate. Alright, lastly, before I go, I do have a couple things I'd like to mention. Some things that are kind of confirmed in my brain. If we go back to this crate breakdown spreadsheet, you'll see that the best crate in the game right now is the Nobles crate. And that's something that I've reported on was back in 3.0. There's a video I have here on my channel called Nobles Crate is Better Than Jester's. It offers the highest silver to ratio of any of the crates, regardless of which server you play on. And I speak to that as Fresh Start or Legacy. It is also worth noting that as of this video, you can farm these guys, the level 39, 40 mobs, even if you are max level, they'll still drop loot. That actually may change because in Korea, at least as of July, they're increasing the successor levels, the levels you get after 55. And that may stop the Nobles mobs from dropping crates. I don't know, but at least right now Nobles crates are decent, and those mobs are incredibly easy to kill just for about anybody, regardless of your level or gear score. Now the big downside, of course, is they do not drop copper or silver crates, but if you're on the Fresh Start server, those aren't all that valuable right now. The reason being is you cannot even craft the tier 2 or 3 Lunafrost, so the Lunarite coming out of those just hasn't increased the crate values yet. So it may be a good choice for you out there to do the Noble crates. Now the second and the last thing about this is I prepared a PowerPoint document for this video which outlines the basic details of all the crates and the purses featured here in this video, and I'm just going to scroll through here a couple of these pages to show you what it looks like. I'm not really featuring it in this video, although I did the work. I will make it available to you in the video description, so if you just want like a quick what the hell is this video about, or a too long didn't read TLDR version, check that out. Wow, okay, so lots of work to do in post now, but I want to thank each and every one of you who takes the time to watch my videos, especially if you make it through the whole thing. Props. I appreciate your support, your likes, your subscribes, and I love to hear your comments, so please put something, say something down in the description. I do in fact read each and every single one of those. And if you can't get enough of me, you can follow me on Twitch, Twitter, and join my Discord. It's free. If you think my work is worth a buck, you can also become a patron or send a donation through Streamlabs. All those links will also be in the video description. And there is no other way to say it, so here it is. Thanks again, and until next time, this is September saying, be well.